Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 77 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. My name is Mike. That is Gavin. And Gavin, something smells different. Are you somewhere new?
I mean, it shouldn't smell different because we're through a computer.
I don't know. It's
I
got
don't
new,
think they've invented that yet.
New location smell, as far as I can tell.
That it also shouldn't because this house is over 100 years old. But yes.
All right. Well, maybe. Hold on. Maybe it's not the location. Maybe there's a third person with us that smells a little, a little bit off.
I don't know. Is there?
First of all, the audacity. There is no strange smell.
Anyway. To all of our wonderful listeners, that would be Liz, Gavin's brand new wife. Liz, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I am a long-time listener since the beginning. Not to brag. Number one fan.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yes.
Exactly. So Sophia is out doing field work at the moment. And so, as Mike was alluding to, Liz and I just arrived in Pennsylvania in our new apartment in this over 100-year-old house for my new job. So we're basically just going to be going over our drive and our trip, which is sort of still happening because we are definitely not like unpacked or even close to having all the things that like you need to exist. But it sure was a week that happened.
I honestly have lost track of the days, and I'm glad you wrote them down because
I sure did.
You had the wherewithal to do that ahead of time.
I sure did. But before we get into what it's like to drive across country, Mike, what happened today?
So today in history, I when I saw this come up, I immediately thought of what you guys were currently going through. We're going baseball again because I am who I am. But there was a former player turned broadcaster named Jim Rooker, who after the Pirates scored 10 runs in the top of the first inning one time, he said, and I quote, "If we don't win this one, I don't think I'd be on that plane ride back home. As a matter of fact, if we don't win, I'll walk back to Pittsburgh."
You can where were they again?
They were playing in Philadelphia, so they were kind of across the state of Pennsylvania.
That's not terrible, but
it's certainly not fun.
I would want to walk it.
Right, exactly.
And as someone that has only spent about 10 hours here in Pennsylvania, the heat, not a fan. The humidity. Okay, guys, let's talk about this. No one wants to make that walk. Nobody.
No.
Well, I'm assuming that Jim Rooker didn't want to make that walk either. However, the Philadelphia Phillies wound up scoring 11 runs, and they won the game 15-11. And then after the season, yeah, it was. I can only imagine the kind of wild game it was, especially knowing that promise was made. So after the season, that 300-ish mile walk was completed for charity from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, which is
That's amazing.
Which is kind of that's the kind of thing I wouldn't expect someone to actually make good on, but he did after the season, and I think that's kind of a cool segue into you guys also moving to Pennsylvania instead of moving across the state. You guys are going, or have already gone now, across the country. So this is going to be a mostly Gavin and Liz episode, I would tend to think. But how's the cross-continent move been?
It's been an experience, Mike.
It's really pushing and testing the limits of our marriage,
18 days in.
I was going to say. Do you get like a 30-day refund on that or something like?
I don't think so. I don't think that's how marriage works.
Return policy?
Return policy here. He did not buy the insurance package.
Yeah, when they ask you anytime you buy like an electronic device, do you want the warranty on that? See, I said no. Was that a mistake? I guess we'll see. So our trip started on June 1st, and we left from our little tiny apartment. Well, we actually moved all of our stuff out of our little tiny apartment. California rent payment with California size, so very small but high rent payment. We moved all of our stuff out of there, I think on the 30th?
Yeah. We ended up staying a few nights with my parents, which what newlywed couple doesn't love moving in with their in-laws?
Yeah. So we left with all of our stuff on the 1st and set out on this magical journey across this continent that we live on, and it's bigger than you think it is. And so the entire time, I would constantly remind Liz, I've already done this. I'm just doing it backwards now. Just putting it in reverse and driving back.
This is a subtle way of bragging.
Well, because for me, I'm also much more used to it because when I would drive to and from New York and South Dakota, I'm the type of person that, like, I drive for peak efficiency. I will stop one time per day to go to the bathroom, get gas, get food, and then not stop again until I reach my hotel.
So, and so how many hours of driving is that normally for you?
A day, anywhere from 10 to 12.
Okay.
Of like in-car drive time, not just like travel time. And I'm normally fine with that. That's what I did to South Dakota and back to New York. That's what I did from New York to California. But some people on the journey were not cool with that. So,
well, first of all, we had a dog, so I'm gonna blame our dog daughter and say she just needs to be let out and go potty and go on walks and stuff. I mean, obviously, it had nothing to do with me and my driving limitations.
I mean, I would never accuse you of that, Liz. I am curious, however. So, where are the places on the trip that your dog Lottie really wanted to stop?
Oh, anywhere with shade.
Yeah. Well, so California is real hot, which might be news to some people. That's sarcasm. It shouldn't be. It was really funny. So when my sister came out for the wedding, she was like, this isn't what I pictured California to be like. She's like, I thought it'd be like a desert. And then it was when they had to drive away from Yosemite. They were like, oh, okay. Yeah, she was like, this makes more sense. This is what I thought California would be like.
California is very diverse, and it's really amazing because you can find different types of environments throughout the state, similar to that we drove through the country. I mean, we saw all kinds of different environments.
Yeah, so the first day, we basically just made it out of California. The first day was just all California. So we stopped in Kingman, Arizona, which is in like the very eastern part of Arizona. And I don't know. Do you want to talk about how that day ended, Liz?
Not particularly, but
do you want me to do it?
No, I definitely don't.
Okay.
These are fighting words. So when we eventually go to our inevitable marriage counseling and therapy as a couple,
that's not a negative. Everybody should go to therapy.
But this will
especially you.
We'll definitely play this podcast for the therapist.
Oh, yeah.
So, for reference...
Hello, doctor, whatever.
So, for reference, we were driving. Gavin recently got a new car. I have a car from a few years ago, but it's very similar. And my car, we're driving through the desert, says I have 20 miles to go. I've been driving this car for 2 years.
And let me clarify here. Her car says she has 20 miles worth of gas. Not the GPS says we have 20 miles. The car says she has 20 miles of gas.
Yes, thank you. Mm-hmm. And I believe it. My car's name is Moby, and I definitely believed that she could go 20 more miles with that gas. We were less than a mile away from a gas station and into the town that we were staying for the night. I was like, of course it's going to be fine. We're in the middle of the Arizona desert. It is blazing hot. We go up a hill with crazy traffic.
There it is.
Yeah. And she puttered out. So, I managed to pull over and I sent Gavin to go get gas.
I am right behind them, right? And I just see her, because, I'm in my car, she's in her car. I see her very sharply pull over to the side of the road on this big hill, lots of traffic. I'm just like, what are you doing? I was like, are you letting Lottie have to go to the bathroom? Like, this is the worst possible place to stop. And so,
I assume she just looks over with this like knowing look, a wry smile.
Well, no, I pull up behind them and I just call her. I'm like, hey, what you doing? She's like, so I ran out of gas.
Which I would like to also mention I have never done in my entire life.
And I will be the first to admit I was not the most understanding of husbands.
Ooh, especially with his mother-in-law in the car.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, we actually haven't even mentioned that. Liz's mom made the trip out with us.
Yes.
So
shout out to Molly.
Yes, she will be listening to this probably tomorrow.
Yes. Hi, Molly.
But yeah, she ran out of gas, and in my mind, because I am so used to traveling long distances like this, and also my parents like beat into my skull early, like with the winters in northern New York, like you never let your car get below a quarter tank of gas ever. And
sure.
Well, because it's like if something were to happen, you can at least run your car and run your heater in the winter.
That you're entirely correct. That's what you should be doing. If you live anywhere where it could be, blizzardy.
Right.
So also, for even more backstory on the gas situation,
yeah,
we had stopped for gas a few hours prior, and it was, remind me again?
It was in the middle of nowhere. It was like, I don't even know where it was near because there was nothing nearby. It was just this gas station on the side of the road. It was $7.40 a gallon.
Yes.
So I don't blame her for not filling up. I don't blame her. I wouldn't either.
Oh, I mean.
So yeah.
I mean, yes, that's expensive gas, but also, well, here we go.
So my car is completely full, and we ended up calling AAA, and they were gonna send somebody out, and Liz was like, "Can you just go get us a can of gas? Go to the gas station."
Again, less than a mile away.
Right. And I was frustrated. It had been a long day, and I was like, okay. I was like, well, you already called AAA. They said somebody's on their way. Liz was like, you can just go back to the hotel, and I was like, okay. And I didn't. I went in and I got a can of gas, which is a good thing because AAA said they sent somebody out. They definitely didn't. Like you got a call like 2 hours after we got to the hotel from a Nevada number, and we weren't even particularly close to Nevada, being like, "Hey, we're here to tow your car. Where are you?" But I went and got a can of gas, and we got back to the hotel safe and sound.
Yep.
We talked a lot that night, and we were like, okay, I apologize profusely because I did not behave well.
So how long did this whole thing take? The whole, just the
half
whole
an
process?
Yeah, half hour.
Okay. So, I mean, at the, like, I get that's not great and not fun as you're driving across the country, but at the end of the day, like, there's worse, that could have been a lot longer had you not been there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But also, that was day one.
Day one. That's how we started. So
I do appreciate that the whole incident led to Gavin being the one that had to apologize. I do quite enjoy that little.
I underplayed how mean I was. I was mean.
Yeah, I will. I'm not going to get to throw you into the bus, but I definitely apologize for being a little too willy-nilly with my gas percentage. But yeah, his reaction was definitely, as I deemed, not appropriate.
Less than ideal.
Would this be your first fight as a married couple?
As a married couple, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you guys handled it well enough to reappear on a podcast.
Yeah.
Shortly thereafter. So that was day one. So
that was day one.
Yeah. So let's move on from there.
Day two. So we were going from Kingman, Arizona, so far eastern Arizona, to Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is like in sort of central-ish New Mexico. And we were going to get to the hotel at like 3:00. We were like, well, that's lame. Like, it was still a fairly long drive. Out west, the states are really big.
Yeah.
But we happened to just pass a sign that said Grand Canyon National Park. And Liz was like, "Hey, Molly, do you want to look up how far away that actually is?" And Molly did. It was
My little co-pilot.
Yeah, it was about an hour out of the way to get there, and then obviously an hour back onto the highway. But we were like, when are we ever going to come to Arizona again?
I mean, what, when in Rome, like, if you're there in Arizona,
the Grand Canyon. Neither of us has ever seen it.
Nope.
We have our list of national parks that like we want to go to all of them, and it just made sense. It's like, okay, well, maybe we'll get back to the hotel at 6 or 7, but hands down, we gotta do this.
Yeah, so we stopped at the Grand Canyon, took some really cool
and you saw
pictures.
The whole thing, and it was beautiful, and you were just awestruck by how cavernous it was.
Oh, we didn't even see close to the whole thing.
I can only imagine how little of it you actually saw, given the time constraints.
Right, we were there for probably
over an hour.
I'd say 2 hours. Yeah. Like I said, like parking, doing things.
We had lunch.
Yeah, we did. Because there's way more infrastructure there than I thought there would be. Most national parks don't have much in the way of stuff.
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed
that. They have some bathrooms. They have the visitor center. Some places have 2 visitor centers if it's a particularly big park. But yeah, most of them don't have like restaurants or like shopping centers, like a grocery store, stuff like that. Yosemite, Yellowstone, and Grand Canyon are the only ones that I've seen to have that kind of thing. And it's probably because they're all in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, it was super cool. We got to buy lots of neat stuff and have a pretty good time. Almost lost Lottie over the Grand Canyon.
Okay.
I'm gonna need some context for this.
So first of all, we really try not to take our dog to national parks, but traveling cross country, leaving her in a hot car in like 100-degree weather, not really an option. So she got to pitter patter around with us, and we took her along the walking path and into shaded areas. And there are ground squirrels very close to the edge.
Right, and like they're squirrels, they can climb stuff. They're perfectly fine on the rocks. Lottie's not, but Lottie sure does like to chase them. So,
jeez. So that's,
and granted, obviously they have lots of fences and stuff like that. So we didn't actually.
That's incredibly scary.
But oh boy, if it was up to her, she would have went full force.
I love my dog so much. Not the brightest.
No, not with that kind of thing. She has a very low, like, self-preservation drive.
Because I've taken such good care of her.
That's true. So that was the beginning of day one. There is another national park in Arizona. I think there's a couple. Is it just the 2? There might be a third somewhere in Arizona, but we basically drive right through Petrified Forest National Park, but between the Grand Canyon and Albuquerque, and we were like, let's stop there. So we stop in, have a really cool conversation with one of the volunteer rangers there. He recommended a couple different, quick, cool loops and overlooks and things, but we realized by the time that we did those, we wouldn't be getting to our hotel until like after 10 or so.
Did you decide to go?
No. Well, we went to the park. Went to the visitor center, bought some stuff, but we didn't do any of those. So we will have to go back. Plus, it's just like insulting to go to the Grand Canyon and not actually do anything there.
Right. I mean, this is the kind of thing where it's good that you can say you went now, but I mean,
exactly,
you'll be making another trip back at some point.
And not to brag, but my mom Molly, she did ride down the Grand Canyon in a raft back in her day.
She sure did.
She did a 7-day rafting trip down the Grand Canyon. So
wow,
I gotta top that.
Wow,
at least 8 days.
Well, and we couldn't even see the water. Like that's how far down the canyon goes. Like I don't think I saw the river down there at all, at least from where we were.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so yeah, we'll definitely have to go. I also enjoy whitewater rafting. So yeah, then we ended our day in Albuquerque. famously the home of High School Musical. Although, as I was informed
Really? I did not know that.
by one of my friends on Facebook, it is not where they shot the movie. That is where the movie takes place, but it is not where they shot the movie, sadly.
I had no idea that it was in. You said Albuquerque?
Yep.
All right. Hey, good for them.
So that was
I assume it was shot in California.
I think so.
Okay.
Yes, that was day 2, and we're only a state and a half in. I guess 2.5 states, all the way across California, all the way across Arizona. Yeah. So 2.5 states.
Okay.
And then, so day 3, much less exciting. We went from Albuquerque, New Mexico, to a town called Liberal, Kansas, which, as I've referred to everybody that I've said to, is a little bit of an oxymoron.
I can only imagine in the middle of Kansas.
So we drove basically just straight west across New Mexico. And actually, we stopped for lunch in like this really small little town called what was it, Tucumcari?
I don't remember the name of it, to be totally honest.
I think that's what it was called, because I asked we at the place we stopped for lunch. I was like, "How do you pronounce this?" But yeah, so we stopped in that town, and I had to ask the waitress. I'm like, "How do you say this?" And so she told me, I think it's called Tucumcari, but it's in like far western New Mexico. And we saw a sign for a little dinosaur museum run by a local community college, and we were like, "Well, we weren't going to get to our hotel as early as we were when we decided to just stop, casually go to the Grand Canyon. But we were still going to get there pretty early. And we were like, well, screw it. Let's stop and check out this little museum.
Adventure.
And I was very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah. It was called the Mesalands Dinosaur Museum, run by Mesalands Community College. So
yeah, and they had an entire paleontology lab and preparation area. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and
I mean, anything that's dinosaur related that impresses you, Gavin, must be good, because famously, like, dinosaurs aren't your thing.
No, I mean, it was just really cool. They had, I think it was just because it was so unexpected. I was expecting something much more like before we even started dating, when we were still just like hanging out. We went to this dinosaur place in South Dakota that was something for like kids. But it was like, you didn't know they had like a big T-Rex outside of the building. When you got inside, it was all like the like rubber, really crappy looking replicas. So like no skeletons, no actual fossils or anything. And that's more of what I was expecting from this.
Mm-hmm.
But no, this was really cool. They had several skeletons of different things made out of bronze, which was really neat. I'd never really seen anything super like that before. Lots of really cool, fossils and things, and it gets our seal of approval.
Yeah, and they had a penny machine.
They sure did. I collect like the flattened souvenir pennies, and they had a machine, and just by that by itself,
props to them.
Seal of approval. And then we made
So this is all on day 3, correct?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So even day 3, when you said was kind of less exciting, there's still some stuff going on.
Right, but that was literally the only thing that happened. We had been in the car for like 4 hours before that, and then we were in the car for 4 hours after that. Mm-hmm. So we cut across the Texas Panhandle and the Oklahoma Panhandle, and then got just barely into Kansas when we stopped at our hotel. And interestingly, that little town has like a museum about the Wizard of Oz.
Really?
Yeah. So
that's the kind of thing I would love to go see.
So,
man,
neither of us went
neither
to
of
go
us
see
actually
it.
saw it.
Molly took Lottie, my dog, and walked her around and kind of got to see the outside of it. So, to my understanding, it seems like Kansas decided that because Wizard of Oz was based off in Kansas, Coda, we're not in Kansas anymore.
We sure are.
Was, that they deserved a museum based off the movie. And so, even though it was not filmed there whatsoever, they had to have a little museum.
Which they could have fooled me. I definitely thought they filmed it in Kansas.
Yeah, so they even had like a replica house built of Auntie M's home that was taken by the Twister, and they had that and like a Yellow Book Road and lots of memorabilia and just fun little
That's the kind of thing.
things.
Not that I'm like a huge Wizard of Oz fan. Obviously, I've seen the movie and I enjoy it. But like that kind of weird thing, just in the middle of the country, we're gonna have a museum to a movie that's from 100 years ago that just
That wasn't even
mentioned our
filmed
state.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like that's the kind of thing I love is stopping at various things like that. I do have a logistical question though.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned getting to your hotels and everything.
Mhm.
Did you book these hotels in advance and say we need to be at this hotel on this day? Or were
Yes,
you
because I can't stand the uncertainty.
wow. See, it would be for me way more grading. Just be like, we have to get here on this day, like regardless of what happens. If we break down or Liz runs out of gas, like.
So we had booked. She just made a face at that. So
she
we
can
had
make as many
booked-
faces as she wants.
We'd booked the first 3 days before we left at all. So we had booked the night in Arizona, the night in Albuquerque, and the night in Kansas.
Okay.
After that, we were like, we'll leave it flexible in case, which we're glad we did because we added an extra day than what we had planned.
And so that made us adjust like the lengths of locations like that we were driving, the distance.
But for me, like one of the worst things that I can imagine is having been in a car for, especially the way I drive, if I were driving this by myself, be in a car for 12 hours and then be like, I'm tired now. Now I'm going to try to find a place and have it be like wherever you happen to be, either all the hotels are super sketchy or you're just in the middle of nowhere and you have to drive for another 2 hours before you get to a place. I'm like, I'm going to fall asleep in my car.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like the worst thing I can imagine. It's just being stuck out in the middle of nowhere with no end goal.
Yep. I mean, I'm someone that wouldn't mind sleeping in a car, but I get the
I meant while driving.
Yes, and also when your car is like fully packed.
Yeah, no,
there's no pulling over and like resting in the back seat.
No, like we couldn't lean our chairs back or anything, or to fall asleep like that. No.
Gotcha. Okay. Well.
So yeah, we like most of them we ended up booking like the night before.
Yeah.
All right. I guess that makes more sense. I thought you would book them like across the country when you had said that, but if
Gavin had his way,
yes,
we would have.
If I had gotten my way, we would have had every hotel booked before we left on day one.
Well, at least we know who wears the pants in this relationship now.
It's 50-50. We booked half the trip.
Yeah.
You know what? Fair enough. That's actually quite adorable the way you just said that. My snark. Well, thanks. My snark removed.
And then, so for day 4, we left from Liberal and basically just drove all across Kansas. I've driven north-south across Kansas before, and that's actually not too bad. East-west across Kansas is miserable. We stopped for lunch in Wichita, which was very deliberate because it was a Pokemon Go event as well.
Mm-hmm.
And shout out to my mom who has no understanding or appreciation for Pokemon
at all,
and it's like, oh, my grown child and her new husband would like to play video games and are willing to adjust their trip because of them.
That is correct.
This is fascinating.
Which like
but at least they're doing it together,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. We were going to pass through Wichita anyway. But cities are where Pokemon Go is the best. So we stopped there, and Wichita seems like a funky little town that I
would absolutely go back.
I would love to go back to Wichita at some point. Had some really good food. I don't remember the name of it, but walked around for a little bit. There was a museum that if we had an extra hour, we didn't really have too much extra time for that day. But I would have liked to go to that museum. They also had a penny machine. We went into the gift shop and got the pennies. But we did not actually participate in the museum. But then from Wichita, we ended the day in Columbia, right? Yes, Columbia, Missouri. So we also drove through Kansas City that day. Didn't stop in Kansas City because by that point, Pokemon was over.
So Gavin said no stops.
That's correct. So we ended the day in Columbia, Missouri, which is pretty much more or less halfway between Kansas City and St. Louis. So Missouri is also an interesting state. Even though we were only in Texas and Oklahoma for a combined hour and a half, driving all across Kansas and Missouri, we saw so many dead armadillos, and it made me so sad.
I'm not sure if I've ever actually seen an armadillo.
And I've never seen one outside of a zoo.
I've never seen a live one.
Yes.
I've seen many dead ones. But yeah, just on that day, we saw easily almost 20.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah. But it was very sad because they're so cute and so fun. But so many little armadillos.
But the trip had to keep going.
The trip must go on. So we ended in Columbia, and then the following day. So most people probably don't know this, but the Gateway Arch in St. Louis, Missouri, is a national park.
Is it really?
It sure is.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't it the smallest?
Yep, that's what one of the guides said. It is the smallest national park in the country.
I mean, I believe it. Is it like just the arch and literally nothing else?
There's a little park surrounding it.
Okay,
but just like any other city park, really.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. I had no idea. I never would have guessed that was a national park.
Yeah, so we stopped in St. Louis, and it's nice. Molly, two of her brothers, live in St. Louis, so we stopped and got coffee in the morning with one of them, and then Molly has already been to the arch. She's been there to visit them before, so Molly went and hung out at their house for a little bit, and Liz and I went up into the arch. There's like an elevator sort of thing that you can go up all the way to the top of the arch and look down at the city and out at the Mississippi River.
Yeah, it was really amazing.
It was much sketchier than I thought it would be.
My father
car.
And of course, my little Pollyanna mother, just the sorry, the example of optimism. She's reading a news article that says, so I think we were there on Saturday or Sunday. Sunday. So on Friday, just 2 days prior, there had been an incident at the Gateway Arch where this little gondola that goes up into the arch stopped and got stuck for about 2 hours, if I remember that correctly.
And it's also was really funny because Mike, our friend RJ, is also currently on a trip with his daughter, and he was supposed to go up to the Gateway Arch on Friday.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so you have to make reservations and like buy the tickets ahead of time,
right?
Which is weird because we definitely saw a couple empty little carts because they run them anyway.
Yeah, so they had different slots available at different times, and I'm sure people reserve them and then don't make it. Yeah,
that's true. But anyway, RJ didn't end up being able to go up, but maybe that was for the best.
I can only imagine just how awful that would have went.
Yeah. So with this prior knowledge, we decided to go in and up the arch.
Yeah, and it was awesome.
In typical Liz fashion, I decided to share this fascinating news story with our two little ride mates, if you will, the two people we were riding up with. And the woman, she was very nervous to be going up. And I was like, well, don't worry. It broke down on Friday. I'm sure it won't break down today.
I know. She just kind of looked at Liz. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Liz said that right to her.
You said that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a good person, but I am a funny person.
You are honest, at least.
Yes.
But to my knowledge, all the carts made it up and down safely. But it was super cool. They have a whole little museum there. Obviously, the Pokemon Go there was also pretty good. We bought some stuff, unfortunately.
Oh.
Right as we were leaving.
Did you have any room to buy stuff?
Oh yeah.
You make room.
We collect things from national parks. Mostly
Christmas ornaments.
We collect Christmas ornaments, especially like wooden ones from each of the parks. As well as the souvenir pennies. Not every park has those. Most of them have either the pennies or these little like silver colored token things.
Which we got some of those.
Those are good enough.
And I love postcards. I collect postcards, and I actually do send them out. So if anyone would like a postcard, just let me know. And so my dear husband, who got very upset with me about running out of gas just a few days prior, we get back to the car. We're heading to meet my mom and my uncle in a whole different town and a whole different location. So we're in a bit of a rush, and Gavin decides to lead. I am driving behind him. I see this white trash fly out past his car, and I'm like, I swear that looks like he just threw it out the window. But I know Gavin, he would never.
I don't litter.
No, he would never do that. So I'm like, clearly he just ran over it and it like got kicked up in the wind or something. And then we are on the highway. We are going. We get to the meeting spot, and I turn to him and I go, so you have the souvenirs, right?
And of course, I'm just like, yeah. And then she turns and, is talking to her mom and her uncle. And I thought about it for like a fraction of a second after I said yeah. And I'm like, oh, no, I definitely do not. So I look around in my car. I to the extent that I can, with everything all packed up, I look for everything, and it sure is not there.
We played a little bit.
Did you leave on top of the car? Like what happened here?
Yes.
Yeah, so we stopped and got some lemonade.
Very astute of you.
Yeah, we stopped and got some lemonade in the park, and then we had, but they, the fresh squeeze kind that they put the lemons right in like the big old souvenir cup.
Oh yeah.
And so we had stopped and opened that up to put some like water in, just regular water to fill it back up. And we think it was probably right when we did that I set it on top of my car.
Yeah, his like windshield, I'm guessing.
No, I think it was the top.
Okay.
I would have noticed it if it was on like the windshield where I could see it.
So it now belongs to St. Louis.
It sure does.
Out in the wild, in the wilderness of the highway.
Mm-hmm.
And we wish it all well. And with that being said, if any listeners...
We've all made mistakes on this trip.
Yes. Forgive and forget is something I never do. So if any of our listeners live in St. Louis or visit or are going to the Arch and want to send us a Christmas ornament...
Oh, okay.
Oh,
It's not where I thought you were going.
But a few postcards, let me know.
I did save the pennies, though. The pennies did get saved. They were in my pocket.
Priorities.
Yes.
We got them.
Penny in the pocket.
Exactly.
There was actually a brief moment when we were a few towns over, about a half-hour drive away from the Arch, and we really did consider going back.
Mm-hmm. Well, because at that point we didn't know where they were. We thought maybe we left them like at the lemonade stand or something. But no.
No.
Because we ended up taking a picture after the lemonade stand, and you could see that I was holding in my hand. So it's like, okay, so it probably made it back to the car.
And then I literally watched it fly off, and I just did not put it together.
Yep.
Until afterwards.
Then we ended that fun but somewhat tragic day. Where did we even end that day?
It was after St. Louis.
Indiana. We made it to Greenfield, Indiana.
Oh, that's right.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit east of Indianapolis. Because where we stayed before the Arch was only like an hour and a half from St. Louis, and we left at what, like 8:30 or so. Mm-hmm. So by the time we got to the Arch, it was maybe 10:30. Well, no, because
our appointment was at 11 or 12:50.
Right. So I think, So I think we got into the parking garage at 12.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And then there's a lot of cities in that area that are like fairly close together, like Kansas City, St. Louis, Indianapolis. I think there's a couple, maybe a little more north, that are all fairly close together. Like
one's kind of right around, I shouldn't say like right around, but the Mississippi River, like kind of right around there. That's, the last place you're going to see a whole lot of big cities until you get to the West Coast.
Right.
At least clumped together like that.
Yep.
By the way, I have a question about this. So
my
dad at one point said that for one reason or another, he drove over the Mississippi, and he was talking about how he had thought, and I'm not sure where exactly it was he drove over, but you're thinking about the Mississippi River, this this big divide, on the continent. It's what always gets talked about. He expected this to be this giant, impressive river, and he was like, I could have skipped the rock over it. How impressive
It
is the
depends where
Mississippi
you
River?
are. It depends where you are. So the Mississippi, especially like further downstream,
Yeah.
is made up of the water from 3 different rivers. So the Mississippi itself starts, if not in Canada, pretty close. And then the Missouri River flows down from like the Dakotas. That's the river that I did my field work on when I was in South Dakota. That
Hmm.
flows southeast and meets the Mississippi River. And then the Ohio River also meets it a little further down. So if you're in the part that's just the Mississippi, if you're in the northern part, yeah, it's not all that big, but it's still the Mississippi technically. I don't know how they decide which river keeps the name. When more than one river meets, I'm not sure how that works. But
I will just, for a point of clarification, the Mississippi does not wind up going up into Canada, which ended up being a problem when the U.S. and Canadians were trying to figure out their border back in the 1800s. And that's the only reason I happen to know that fact.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That is a whole other story for another time that maybe we'll do. And I wish you were dead on Mike Takes the Wheel episode at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so it probably sounds like he drove across the northern part.
Okay, gotcha.
But where we were, it was probably a good few hundred feet across at least.
Oh, absolutely. I would definitely say so.
Okay, I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, so we ended the day off a little bit east of Indianapolis. And then we originally had planned to just drive straight from there to our new apartment. But we realized that there was another national park only slightly out of the way in Ohio, the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, one that I previously on the podcast have incorrectly said is basically in downtown Cleveland. It makes up most of the stretch between Akron and Cleveland, which is weird. You wouldn't think 2 decent-sized cities like that would have much forest between them. And
I wouldn't guess.
That's a weird national park.
I would definitely say between that and the Arch.
Those are probably the 2 weirdest national parks, I think.
They are interesting, to say the least.
So Cuyahoga Valley is like much more like a state park. Yep. Honestly, you didn't have to pay.
It was very nice.
Yeah, no, it was really nice. That was the only one that we did like an actual like hike trail at. But you didn't have to pay to get in. There wasn't all the different facilities and stuff, you know.
They have a visitor center.
No pennies though, sadly.
No pennies.
Ooh, no bueno.
So, but we hung out for a little bit, hiked to a little waterfall thing, only for Molly to be like, that was it. Which the waterfall was a little underwhelming. It was a long, not that long. It was, I think, 3 miles-ish round trip.
Yeah.
So not long, but it was humid. We'd been in a car all morning.
Right.
We've been in
I bet at this point Molly
all week. Yeah.
As nice as Molly is, and Liz, I have met your mother. She is just one of the nicest human beings that exists.
Correct.
I imagine at this point she was even like, all right, can we just get to where we're going?
No, she was
She wanted to see it. She did.
She was so sweet because we were doing this hike and I was really concerned about her, and you know, she's my mom and I just want to make sure she's okay. And so Gavin's like, yeah, it's not that far. We can totally do it. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I can't do it. Like, I don't know, Gavin. Like, I'm not as fit as I once was. And
yeah, she kept making jokes like that. I was like,
sure, jokes, air quote.
I was
definitely.
like, yeah, okay.
Not real. But so mom goes on this hike and she's so excited and she sees this woman and she's like, excuse me, are we close? You know, she just wants to make sure she can make it back. That's the biggest thing. And the woman is carrying a baby on her back, about 2 years old. And she's like, oh yeah, I'm 5 months pregnant.
Yep.
Got a baby on my back. She's like, you're like, you know, a half a mile away. Like, you're doing great. You got this. And so the whole time my mom was like, I'm not 5 months pregnant and I don't have a baby on my back. I can do this.
Yep.
And for any of you that ever meet my mother, Mike, she may have told you this. I know we have mentioned this joke quite a bit. Yeah. But she likes to remind everyone, I once ran a marathon.
She sure did.
I do believe I remember that, yes.
So, but we made it there safely, only to be slightly underwhelmed by
There wasn't like a large amount of water flow, but
No.
it was flowing.
Yeah.
Which from a California standard,
exactly,
it was appreciated.
And at least you guys got to see it, and now you'll never have to worry about it again.
Exactly.
But so we got to check that national park off our list.
And then so we stayed our last hotel night in eastern Pennsylvania, in Grove City.
Yep.
A little bit north of Pittsburgh, maybe about an hour or so, maybe 2 hours north of Pittsburgh.
And unfortunately, I can't remember where we went to dinner, the name of it, so I'd love to give him a shout out.
It was so good, though.
It was delicious, but also we ordered this massive pretzel, and I believe in the description it was described as
absurdly big.
Absurdly big.
And it was. And
I was going to say, did it fit the description?
It was.
We had some leftovers tonight, and there are still leftovers for tomorrow.
There sure are.
Oh, good God.
And it was delicious.
Soft pretzels with beer cheese is my favorite food in the world.
Big fan.
So we had a wonderful pretzel, and
amongst other things, we did have other food too,
but mostly the pretzel. And we stayed there, and the main reason that we added because like I said, we were supposed to end up at our apartment at like evening-ish time that day, but we were like, well, if we do that, it'll be evening. We won't have time to do stuff like, go get groceries and things like that without being super exhausted. We won't get to see the national park, and like what's the point?
Yeah.
and
what's one more night?
Exactly, and we would still have to have driven 9 hours that day. So we ended up getting here a day later than we had planned, but it was a nice, easy drive this morning. A bit of weather. It has rained pretty much all day.
Yeah.
Which
we were very lucky
for the California natives, that's pretty good.
And I'm very flustered because one, I'm very tired, but two,
I can only imagine just how exhausted you guys are.
Also dehydrated. It is so humid here.
Yes,
and so it's pouring rain, and it's also so hot, at least by my standards, because I am used to a dry heat and having a nice, well insulated house.
I have some
with
bad
no
news.
AC, but I'm having a bit of a culture shock. And weather shock.
You'll get used to it.
And I think at that point it becomes Stockholm Syndrome or something along those lines. So,
and on that note, Liz, welcome to the East Coast, and Gavin, welcome back. It is. I mean, so Gavin, you've done this now. I always forget, but people who've driven across the country, they always seem to agree on which is the best way to do it. But I forget which one. Is it better to start east and drive west, or to start in the west and drive east? Which is a better experience?
So it was really different experiences each time, just because the way to California, so east to west.
That was, you were trying to be really efficient versus
exactly.
Okay.
He was not sightseeing.
I was not. Like I said, most of those roads I drove anyway, but it's like I didn't stop and see the Gateway Arch. I didn't stop and see the Grand Canyon. I personally, having grown, I think it depends on where you grow up, because I always felt like just a little uncomfortable in areas where there's not a bunch of trees. I don't know why, but especially like I grew up in a pretty rural area in New York. There's always, everywhere you look around my house, there's forest everywhere you look. And so that's just what I grew up with and what I'm used to. Whereas like even when I was in South Dakota, even though I was there for 2 years, I'm like, this just feels like kind of wrong to not have trees everywhere. And even when there were trees, they were just like, they were pine trees. So it's like, we're getting uncomfy. We're sitting on an air mattress right now.
Sorry, guys.
You can leave this. You can leave this one in.
I cut out an earlier one, but you know what? We're just going to leave the air mattress ruffling right now.
We have yet to purchase an official mattress, so
yeah. So we're sleeping on this air mattress for the foreseeable future,
which is just adorable.
Oh yeah. Well, our original plan was to sleep on sleeping pads like you would sleep on in a tent. but we accidentally packed those in our storage unit that's getting here in a week and a half.
Yep.
But yeah, I definitely think, just like for me, comfort wise, driving from west to east is better because you're going from desert to more familiar, because you're getting from desert to like plains to then forest. Whereas the other way, you just get more and more uncomfortable leaving
Right.
where you're what you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
And also, the longer you're in the car, you're just generally uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, I have never driven across country. I have visited the East Coast.
Mhm.
So this is not my first East Coast adventure.
Yeah.
I've actually lived out in Virginia for quite some time. But I would definitely say, like, if I had the option, I liked the way we did it. See, I also am not the biggest fan of the desert personally, but my issue comes from like a survivalist standpoint where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
if I get stuck and stranded, like if I ran out of gas out here on the East Coast. Is there swearing on this podcast?
No.
Okay,
No.
cool. Well, just insert swear word
Can't,
here.
just a really long bleep.
Yeah. I can definitely, like, I would have no issue, like, especially during like a summer or something, like not during the winter if it was like dumping snow and I got stuck out here. But just like there's water, there's trees, there's cover.
Yeah.
If I got stuck out in Arizona, like where my
You're
car
gonna
broke
die.
down, like I don't think I'd want to live.
Now, Liz, I am
make
curious
it-
in your perspective.
yes.
So we
Yes.
know Gavin's all about efficiency. But if it was your call, if you were to drive across the country again, would you do it in the same amount of time? Would you make more stops and try and hit everything along the way? Would you just try and get to where you're going? What would you like to do if you had to make this trip again?
So for me, it gets broken down into two categories. What is there to do and see? And how much money do we have? Because especially
Okay.
like because we were packing so much stuff, there was no free space. We had my dog. It was really limited as to how long we could stay in like one location.
And also my lizard.
Yes.
At least the dog can come out of a car
Yes.
and find some shade and cool down. You can't super take a lizard out and just let it walk around. So
You can't put a leash on the lizard.
Yeah, well,
it happens.
If it's a big enough lizard, you can do that. Not mine, but yeah. So I couldn't really leave my car for more than 45 minutes to an hour. So that put a damper on what stuff we were able to do. The one exception to that was the Gateway Arch because we parked in a parking garage. So there, I was like, it's warm, but not gonna be,
it's not gonna cook it.
No. Because it was roughly 80, but like 80 in the shade. That's,
So if this had been a cute little honeymoon trip that like was perfect and unlimited money, and our
we definitely would have.
We're just at home.
Yeah,
we would take our time. We would have done like 2, maybe 3 days at Grand Canyon. Actually get out and do some like hiking, like do some camping maybe out there if possible.
Or even just get to see Petrified Forest, because Petrified Forest has some really cool paleontology, but we just didn't really
go rafting. There's so much stuff that it would have been awesome to do.
It sounds as though at some point in your very long, healthy marriage, that when you guys have the money and the vacation time, you might make this kind of a trip again and really try and do it right.
Oh, for sure.
And I think especially with my family being out that direction. I mean, I could definitely see us needing to drive out there like once or twice.
Well, there's at least 4 national parks just in California that we haven't been to together. So there's that.
Yeah.
That there is. So are there any final thoughts, any final pieces of wisdom for anybody else that might be trying to travel across the country?
Don't bring your dog. It's not worth it.
Don't bring your dog. Don't be one of those people. Ourselves included.
Yeah.
We didn't have a whole bunch of a choice, but also, maybe do a cross country trip before you get married. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It worked out perfect. Yeah, if you can, bring your mom.
And avoid the middle of. I know this is gonna, depending on where the listeners are from, avoid the middle of the country. Like I liked driving across South Dakota. Personally, there's neat things to do and see. There's lots of neat stuff to do and see in like Montana. But boy, I even have some relatives that live in Nebraska. There's a couple of cool things in Nebraska, but man, other than Wichita, Kansas sucked.
But again, Wichita was fantastic.
Yes, and I do have some friends from Kansas, so I'm sorry, but
so
it was not fun to drive through.
Our words of wisdom, I think, would come down to travel wherever you can, take every opportunity, and if it sucks, what did you lose?
You've got a great story at that point.
A little bit of money, a little bit of time, but at the end of the day, you got to give each thing a shot because life is short. And who knows how long, like...
You're taking a dark turn here, Liz.
I don't know. Just, the world's crazy, man. The world's crazy. The
world is crazy.
About things that used to be alive. I don't know.
I mean, to be fair, there's only so dark of a turn you can take when our podcast is literally called I Wish You Were Dead.
That's true.
So... Well, Liz, thank you very much for joining us. Congratulations to you guys on being married, on having your first fight as a married couple, on making it across the country.
Cheers.
And Gavin, on your brand new job that I can't wait to hear much more about once you actually get started.
Yeah, I start this coming Monday. This week's, or I guess next week's episode will not be about that, just because by that point I will have had like a day and a half of work. But New episode about the job coming soon.
Looking very much forward to it. But until that point,
wait, real quick. Also,
get ready for the intro, and I get ready for the. All right, here we go. Fine.
Next week, a certain movie comes out, or no, it's this week. A certain movie comes out. You might have heard of it, called Jurassic World. We will probably have an episode about that once the three regular hosts are able to see it. We'll probably do an episode about it, and me basically just be dumping on that movie the entire time. But yeah, so if you are curious and you made it this far into the episode, we will be doing a Jurassic World Dominion episode at some point.
And I cannot wait to actually participate in that one. But until we get there, this has been episode 77 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. My name is Mike, that is Gavin, and that is Liz. Thank you for listening, everybody, and we should be back with a more conventional episode next week. Until then, take care.
This episode of I Wish You Were Dead was written by Gavin Davidson and hosted by Gavin Davidson, Mike Bryson, and Fenella Campanino. It was sound edited by Mike Bryson and edited for YouTube by Gavin Davidson. Special thanks to former guests of the pod and to listeners like you.